if you would open up your Bible to Judges chapter 14. Judges chapter 14. That's odd. I don't know why the microphone's all the way up there. Judges chapter 14. Okay, before we get started today, does anybody have any Bible questions? All right. Just to recap what's happened, Samson's father and mother had made a covenant with God that Samson's mother would not be given to any wine or to any strong drink or to eat any unclean thing, and that their child would be a Nazirite from the womb, and it would be him who would deliver Israel from the hands of the Philistines, or at least he would be the agent through which God would deliver Israel from the hands of the Philistines. We saw that Samson was born later on in chapter 13, and then in chapter 14, Samson saw one of the daughters of the Philistines who he took a liking to and wanted her to be his bride. Whenever they were, I suppose, traveling down there, you can see in chapter 14 and verse 5, there was a young lion who came roaring toward Samson, and the Spirit of the Lord came upon him mightily, verse 6 says, so that he tore him as one tears a young goat, though he had nothing in his hand. But he did not tell his father or mother what he had done. So Samson was able to overtake this lion with just his hands. No weapons, no swords, nothing. And later on, when he returned to take this woman as his bride, he turned aside to go look at where that lion was that he had killed, and he found that a swarm of bees had sort of taken up shop and made some honey. And so Samson took some honey, he ate some, he gave some to his mother and to his father, and now they're going to go down to to where this woman is to throw a feast so that she can take him as his bride. And so that's about where we got to last week, was Judges chapter 14, round about verse 10. So let's start reading there. Then his father went down to the woman, and Samson made a feast there, for the young woman, or rather for the young men, customarily did this. When they saw him, they brought 30 companions to be with him. Then Samson said to them, "Let me now propound a riddle to you. If you will indeed tell it to me within the 7 days of the feast, and find it out, then I'll give you 30 linen wraps and 30 changes of clothes. But if you're unable to tell me, then you shall give me 30 linen wraps and 30 changes of clothes." And they said to him, "Propound your riddle, that we may hear it." So starting off, notice that the feast day that the feast that they're celebrating here for the wedding, or for the potential wedding, was 7 days long. This is seen often in Bible times. You see the feasts go on and on and on. We read in Esther about how the feast went for, was it 144 days or something like that? So the feasts were not, one-time feasts like we have. Whenever we have a wedding banquet or something like that, we get together for a couple hours and we're already kind of getting tired and ready to go home. But here they have a feast that lasts for 7 days, and Samson proposes this riddle to these 30 companions that are with him. Basically, I'll give you all a set of clothes, or you give me a set of clothes, depending on whether or not you can answer this riddle. And so here he says in verse 14, here's the riddle. Out of the eater came something to eat, and out of the strong came something sweet. But they cannot tell the riddle in 3 days. I don't know about you, but the riddle seems kind of unfair. How are they supposed to guess what this even means, right? But I guess it's an easy way to get, 30 sets of clothes, right? Then again, I don't know about you, but I don't think I need 30 sets of clothes. I can do with, way less than that. too much laundry to have to deal with. But notice in verse 14, they could not tell the riddle in 3 days. Then it came about on the 4th day that they said to Samson's wife, "Entice your husband, so that he will tell us the riddle, or we will burn you and your father's house with fire. Have you invited us to impoverish us? Is this not so?" So apparently they didn't really count the cost when they entered into this bargain with Samson. They had never considered that they might fail at guessing what this riddle is. And so they basically tell her, "You tell us what this riddle means, or we're going to burn down your house and burn you up with it." So that's kind of extreme measures that they're taking. But they really want to hold on to these set of clothes each. So he says, "Have you invited us to impoverish us? Is this not so?" So part of it as well, though, is not just that they can't figure out the riddle, but that they can tell that they've just sort of been brought there to be tricked by Samson. Samson brought them in without the intentions of befriending them. He brought them in to basically get 30 sets of clothes out of them by giving them this impossible riddle to figure out. Verse 17 says, "However, she wept before him 7 days while their feast lasted. And on the 7th day he told her because she pressed him so hard. She then told the riddle to the sons of her people. So the men in the city said to him on the 7th day before the sun went down, 'What is sweeter than honey? And what is stronger than a lion?' And he said to them, 'If you had not plowed with my heifer, you would not have found out my riddle.'" So in verse 18, they are able to guess the meaning of this riddle. And he says, "If you've not plowed on my heifer, you have not found out my riddle." I don't really know about you, but I don't think it would go over well if I called Laura a heifer.
But she's your heifer.
Yeah.
No.
Keith said, "But she's your heifer."
But she's yours.
Oh.
No. Don't listen to her.
Speaking of which,
You got to answer that.
you might go get my ginger ale out of the back fridge.
That was not a good.
Yeah, I know. That was bad. My voice is kind of going out, isn't it?
Yeah, you
It's so
got something going on.
strange. Yeah, Jimmy called me on, what was that, Thursday or Friday? One of those. And he asked me how I was doing. I said, "I'm good, but my voice is going." And apparently it's going even more. It didn't seem like that yesterday, though, so I don't.
Changing the world.
I think you were hollering at Lord too much.
Probably so. I'm a mean husband, I guess.
You feel sick or just what?
Nope, just a sore throat. I guess I got to take this fancy county insurance that we got now and go take it to the doctor or something. I don't know.
With some lemon and honey, save the money.
Yeah. That already is a little bit better just by drinking the drink. Okay, so they say, "What is sweeter than honey? What is stronger than a lion?" And he said to them, "If you had not plowed on my heifer, you would not have found out my riddle." Oh, brother. All right. Then the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him, and he went down to Ashkelon and killed 30 of them and took their spoil and gave the change of the clothes to those who told the riddle. And his anger burned, and he went up to his father's house. But Samson's wife was given to his companion who had been his friend. Alrighty, just a real turn of events here. So keep in mind though that Samson is doing all this because his main mission is to deliver Israel from the hands of the Philistines. We saw that back at the end of chapter 13 when that's what the Lord told his mother and his father his mission would be. And if you keep in mind, back in chapter 14 in verse 4, we read that his father and his mother did not know that it was of the Lord, for he was seeking an occasion against the Philistines. So all of this that Samson does is done intentionally to try to deliver Israel from the hands of the Philistines. And it starts off here in Judges chapter 14 and verse 19 and 20 here, where he goes and he he goes to the city and he kills 30 individuals, and he takes their spoil, the things that they have, and gives them to these 30 men who answered the riddle. Verse 20, though, we see that Samson's wife was given to his companion who had been his friend.
Who gave?
Well, I suppose it would be his father, or her father. Now, when you talk about Samson's wife...
let me ask you this question.
All right.
His companion, would that be someone of the tribes of Israel or Philistine?
According to my Bible here, the center column reference reads, "It was given to his best man."
Okay, so would he be a Philistine or be a Israelite?
It could. I don't think so. I think it was one of these that was part of his wedding party here in.
He was given 30 companions up in verse 11, and they weren't really his friends. They were just people there.
Yeah, I think it was a Philistine because we don't read about any Jews going down with him, anyways.
Yes, they chose.
Then why would I'm kind of confused. If Samson was looking for an occasion to start something with the Philistines, why would that be a companion of his? Why would another Philistine be a companion of his?
Keep your friends close and your enemies close.
Well, it says that he was given 30 companions up in.
I guess they were given to serve him throughout the wedding.
Right.
Yeah, they were given the 30 companions up in verse 11.
Yeah,
They were doing what now?
They were
NIV
given to him kind of like groomsmen for a wedding party, and they were there to like attend to him, but they weren't like his real friends, I don't think.
I think the NIV does a good job with it. When the people saw him, they chose 30 countrymen to be his companions. So he had nothing to do with it.
No.
Okay.
And also it stated that Samuel went down because he had fallen, and mother went down. And just like Jim was saying, that they gave him 30 men for his companion,
Right.
you know, so, and the footnotes were actually mentioned that same thing in 9, saying the best man, somebody that was supposed to be the best man at the wedding.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. Especially because you don't read about him taking any of his friends, from Judea down at all. So, all right, let's see.
Okay, who were these people in Ashkelon? Because it says that the Spirit of the Lord came upon him in power, so this was something God wanted him to do, to strike down these people?
Right, these are Philistines. What he's doing here is he's just enraging the Philistines. He's getting them all stirred up. We're going to see. We're at the very last verse of Judges 14. So a part of this is all just to get the Philistines stirred up, because remember he's got like superhuman strength basically, and so he's able to deliver Israel from their hands by himself. And so all this is done to get under their skin. This is especially going to be seen. It's going to sort of escalate as you move through these chapters. Johnny.
Not to get the Philistine under his skin, but to get him under the Philistine skin.
Right, what did I say?
I think in verse 4,
Oh.
where it was saying God planned this so that he can give an occasion for Samson to get angry with the Philistines, go ahead and carry out his purpose, because his whole purpose was for him being born to be a Nazarite, for him to fight against the Philistines, to destroy them.
Right. So it's kind of God's putting them both against each other, getting them both sort of stirred up. But
I had to chuckle. He killed 30 of them and left them naked. That would have to irritate a few of them.
yeah, that's pretty shameful, isn't it? So let's get into Judges 15. But after a while, in the time of wheat harvest, Samson visited his wife with a young goat and said, "I will go into my wife in her room." But her father did not let him enter. His father said, "I really thought that you hated her intensely, so I gave her to your companion. Is not her younger sister more beautiful than she? Please let her be yours instead." So it was the father of the Samson that gave away his wife to his companion. So go figure. But anyways, so what we see here in chapter 15 is that this is going to be something else that's going to really irritate Samson. His father's theory is, well, I thought you hated her. Her younger sister's more beautiful. Just take her. But that wasn't going to sit very well with Samson.
Is it his father or her father?
Her father.
Her
Her
father.
father.
It's his.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, it was her father. So I was right. For some reason, I read this as his father. Because a while ago, I said it was her father. But then I got it. I just read it wrong. That's kind of like the sentence, well, if I do that, you'll already know what it is. Well, I'll just write it for you anyways because it's fun. You've probably seen this before. Let's see. Can you read that for me, Jaden, out loud?
The man went to Paris in the springtime.
Really? The man went to Paris in the springtime. See, your brain corrects that automatically, and so I guess what happened to me was I corrected it in my mind for some reason, read it wrong. But that's a pretty cool trick if you ever want to show that to somebody, because their brain will delete the first "the" or the second "the" and just read it right. So anyways, Samson here, he is in verse 3. He says, "This time I shall be blameless in regard to the Philistines when I do them harm." So he kind of points out, okay, maybe I wasn't making the best decisions in the last chapter, but here he says I'm going to be blameless in regard to them. So Samson went and caught 300 foxes. 300 foxes, and took torches and turned the foxes tail to tail and put one torch in the middle between two tails. When he had set fire to the torches, he released the foxes into the standing grain of the Philistines, thus burning up the shocks and the standing grain along with the vineyards and groves. Wow, so he's got a...
How do you catch 300 foxes?
I don't know how he caught 300 foxes. How did he kill a lion with his bare hands? So I guess that's the answer.
Once he's born with the strength, we can kind of see how he kills a lion.
Right.
Hand to hand.
300 foxes. I don't know.
How do you catch 300 foxes?
I don't know how he would do it. I guess he's an expert hunter or something. Who knows?
Couldn't catch it.
Was there that many foxes in that area? I mean, was it?
Well, apparently so.
I guess so.
There was at least 300, right?
Implying that there was some supernatural sending the 300 foxes. Is that what you're asking?
I'm just saying. In modern time, how do you catch in one area catch 300 foxes?
I've seen one in my lifetime. in the woods. One in my lifetime.
I saw.
You don't see fox. Foxes are not.
This was
They're not. He's
What they
one in your
call
lifetime.
foxes.
Yeah.
a heavily populated area of foxes here. I've only seen one fox, I think, or maybe more, but one for sure when we were rabbit hunting. The dogs jumped the fox instead of the rabbit. Well, they were probably chasing the rabbit too, but they also jumped the fox. I didn't see a hound though, so it wasn't the same one from that movie. Yeah. Okay, so we got these 300 foxes. He puts them in pairs of 150, and he sets them loose in their grain fields to burn up all their grain with these torches. Really sort of cruel to the foxes, wasn't it?
What did he do? He set them on the tails on fire?
He set the torch on fire in between the tails. He sort of,
so
I guess he.
Okay.
And so when the fire started, they set loose, run into the grain, and burned it all down. So the Philistines said, "Who did this?" And they said, "Samson, the son-in-law of Timnite, because he took his wife and gave her to his companion." So the Philistines came up and burned her and her father with fire. Ooh. Yes, that's extreme as well. But notice that it says, everybody knows it was Samson that did it. Who did this? It was Samson. So this man, he wasn't just like, I pictured it, as him doing it sort of in secret. But there's all these people that are seeing it going on, And so nobody even was able to stop him from doing this. They all just knew it was him. It wasn't something he did in a corner. And so the Philistines, they acted extraordinarily evil here, as Samson sort of did with the foxes. And they killed Samson's wife and his father-in-law with fire. Samson said to them, "Since you act like this, I will surely take revenge on you, but after that I'll quit." Right. But, kind of keeps going, doesn't he? But anyways, he struck them ruthlessly with a great slaughter, and he went down and lived in the cleft of the rock of Edom. Then the Philistines went up and camped in Judah and spread out in Lehi. The men of Judah said, "Why have you come up against us?" And they said, "We've come up to bind Samson in order to do to him as he did to us." Then 3,000 men of Judah went down to the cleft of the rock of Edom and said to Samson, "Do you know that the Philistines are rulers over us? What then is this that you've done to us?" And he said to them, "As they did to me, so I have done to them." So it's kind of both the same story from both parties. We're coming to do to him what he did to us. Oh yeah, well I did to them because that's what they did to me. So a lot of he said, she said going on here, but regardless, do what, Laura?
So it sounds like my third graders.
Oh. So in verse 12 he says, "We've come down to bind you so that we may give you into the hands of the Philistines." And Samson said to them, "Swear to me that you will not kill me." So they said to him, "No, we will bind you fast and give you into their hands, yet surely we will not kill you." Then they bound him with 2 new ropes and brought him up from the rock. So Samson, he's got another plan here cooking up.
This is funny.
It is funny.
We won't kill you, but we'll just bind you and give you to the people that are gonna kill you.
Right, that's right. But Samson, these 3,000 men would have been nothing to Samson. He could have fought them all off and escaped. But he finds another occasion here to attack the Philistines. So he has them bind his hands with 2 new ropes. And so this isn't, fragile old ropes. It's not frayed. These are, fresh out of the rope making factory. And he gets them bound up. And when they come, verse 14, to Lehi, the Philistines shouted as they met him. And the Spirit of the Lord came upon him mightily, so that the ropes that were on his arms were as flax that is burned with fire, and his bonds dropped from his hands. That's kind of like what he described about the lion. The lion was like a young goat, in his hands. And so, the image here, you've seen it on the movies, right? When the man's tied up and the bad guys all surround him and he just busts out of it real quick and, beats them all. This is what happened with Samson. In verse 15, he found a fresh jawbone of a donkey. So he reached out and took it and killed 1,000 men with it. Okay, this is just...
Use the word.
Do what?
Use the word.
Use the word. What word?
Ass.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's not in my Bible.
But that's what it says mine.
Oh.
And it was
What?
ironic to use that jawbone of the way he used that word to do what he did to the Philistines. More humiliation to them. If you can contemplate what I'm saying.
Right, yeah, I think
He didn't
that.
take a sword, he didn't take a spear, he didn't take a rock, he took a jawbone of an ass,
Right.
and what he did to them was more humiliation.
That's right. And here's the thing. Where is he getting all this time to do all this? He gets all this time to tie together the foxes. He finds this donkey jawbone laying out over there. I don't know. I just thought that was interesting. But it's a fresh jawbone of a donkey. Again, not, the Bible makes it very plain, not an old, it's very fresh. Well, anyways, he took it and he killed 1,000 men with it. Then Samson said, "With the jawbone of a donkey, heaps upon heaps. With the jawbone of a donkey, I've killed 1,000 men." He's very poetic, isn't he? With his riddles and his victory chants. A really interesting character, Samson is.
I think, obviously, the Lord put the jawbone there. We don't know how. but
Sure.
The Lord took care of that.
Oh, for sure.
And I think it's humorous in 16, with the donkey's jawbone, I made donkeys of them.
Oh, is that what yours says?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's...
Oh, yeah, it says the same root as a donkey in my center column reference here. Heap to heaps. Hebrew is the same root as donkey. That's, so there's some wordplay going on here. So he's turning them into heaps of donkeys.
Yeah.
All right. When he finished speaking, he threw the jawbone from his hand, and he named the place Ramoth Lehi, which is the high place of the jawbone. Really attractive name for a province, or whatever. So then he became very thirsty, and he called to the Lord and said, You have given this great deliverance by the hand of your servant. Now shall I die of thirst and fall into the hands of the uncircumcised? But God split the hollow place that is in Lehi, so that water came out of it. When he drank, his strength returned and he revived. Therefore he named it in Hakor, which is in Lehi to this day. So he judged Israel 20 years in the days of the Philistines. So this is the deliverance of Israel from the hands of the Philistines. He's set up as a judge, and he rules over the people for 20 years after killing 1,000 of their men with a donkey jawbone. And then the Lord gives them this water out of the ground to return his strength to himself. Anybody got any comments or questions up to this point? I know we're moving kind of fast, but we got a lot of ground of Samson to cover. A lot of heel of the donkey jawbones to go over. All right, so chapter 16. Okay, Keith?
I think we are so consumed a lot of time with the story of Samson. We look at him as being solely and this was what his purpose was, to deliver Israel out of the hands of the Philistines. But at the same time, he was also, at this last scripture, he also was a judge of the children of Israel. So there was more to Samson than just his brute strength and his cunningness and all that. He actually judged his people. Most judges would sit down and stand in, when people had conflicts amongst themselves, he would stand in and give a decision one way or the other, and kind of keeping the peace and trying to make right judgment amongst the people. So there was more to Samson than just his brute strength. But a lot of times we just look at that. This is what Samson was born to do, to destroy the Philistines and because of his great strength and all that. But he was also, he had to have some wisdom because the seat of a judge.
Right, and you kind of see that from the riddle that he gave, and and so the poem that he gave in the last chapter. He is a smart guy, and so he was able to judge in Israel for about 20 years. All right, chapter 16, verse 1. Now Samson went to Gaza and saw a harlot there, and went into her. When it was told to the Gazites, saying, Samson has come here, they surrounded the place and lay in wait for him all night at the gate of the city. And they kept silent all night, saying, Let us wait until the morning light, then we will kill him. Now Samson lay until midnight, and at midnight he arose and took hold of the doors of the city gate and the 2 posts, and pulled them up along with the bars. Then he put them on his shoulders and carried them up to the top of the mountain, which is opposite Hebron. So it's so funny. The Bible just words this like it's a common everyday occurrence. It's like he hopped up, he took the doors on his back, and he just walked up to the hill. All right. It doesn't talk about how he huffed and he puffed. It doesn't give all these extra details. It just says it like it is. It's just fascinating.
These was a gate. I mean, when you said the doors, it's not just like a door like that.
Right.
These was like the doors to the gate of the city.
Right.
These were big gate doors.
Yeah, and the two posts to hold him down. So he just lifts up the whole thing on his back, I guess, and takes off to this mountain.
And think about this. I read somewhere this was quite a distance. Imagine somebody carrying the gates of the gates of the city and taking them out 15, 20 miles.
I mean, I can't even imagine somebody. Yeah, I can't imagine somebody taking them a couple feet or picking them up out of the ground to begin with. Yeah, but he's a powerhouse. You'd want him to be like middle linebacker or something, I guess. And after this, it came about that he loved the woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. The Lord of the Philistines came up to her and said to her, "Entice him, and see where his great strength lies, and how we may overpower him, that we may bind him to afflict him. Then we will each give you 1,100 pieces of silver." I don't know how many lords of the Philistines there are, but each of them would give her 1,100 pieces of silver. That's a high price to pay for old Samson.
He's under the bus.
Yeah. And remember that Judas just sold Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. And so this is a lot of money. So Delilah said to Samson, "Please tell me where your great strength is, and how you may be bound to afflict you." Samson's got to be thinking, what do you think, I'm stupid? Delilah says, "Please let me know how we can defeat you." And Samson says in verse 7, "If they bind me with 7 fresh cords that have not been dried, then I'll become weak and be like any other man." Then the lords of the Philistines brought up to her 7 fresh cords that had not been dried, and she bound him with them. Now she had men lying in wait in an inner room, and she said to him, "The Philistines are upon you, Samson." But he snapped the cords as a string of tow snaps when it touches the fire. So his strength was not discovered. Then Delilah said to Samson, "Behold, you've deceived me and told me lies. Now please tell me how you may be bound." Why is he even still there? She's already tried to get him trapped once and afflicted once, and he's just still there? Okay.
That just lets you know. Man is very weak when it comes to women.
I guess in Samson's case, that's true. All right, so Samson says to her in verse 11, "If you bind me tightly with new ropes, which have not been used, then I'll become weak and be like any other man." Okay, now, he's already been bound with new ropes before, right? So they must not have been very familiar with that story. So Delilah took new ropes and bound him with them and said to him, "The Philistines are upon you, Samson," for the men were lying in wait in the inner room. But he snapped the ropes from his arms like a thread. Notice she says the Philistines are upon you, Samson. So it's almost as if she's trying to play it off like she wasn't really sure, even though she's the one that got this information out of him. Delilah, she just confuses me. And it confuses me even more that Samson was willing to put up with all that. I don't know. That's odd.
Seemed like he would have knew that she was up to something, because she kept asking him, "What is it that you get this strength that makes him strong, whatever?" And he told her about the ropes, and she still, he came back again and asked him again. She came back and asked him again when he figured out it didn't work.
He just playing with her.
Yeah, but then he gonna eventually tell her.
Yeah, because you know what? You all know what's going on with that. I mean, have your wife ever asked you something and you just didn't want to tell her? You just tell her. You hit around, tell her things. And, well, a lot of people have. They didn't start off at the beginning telling her the whole truth. Maybe told part of it, not all of it. Because
Right.
she didn't just want her to know it. But if she's persistent, every day, that kind of wear you down.
Yep.
And in the end, he ends up telling the wife what they wanted to know from the beginning. She wore over a period of time, just wearing him down.
The power to wear somebody down to the... All right, so Delilah says to Samson a third time, "Up to now you deceived me and told me lies. Tell me how you may be bound." And he said to her, "If you weave the 7 locks of my hair with the web and fasten it with a pin, then I'll become weak and be like any other man." So while he slept, Delilah took the 7 locks of his hair and wove them into the web. And she fastened it with the pin and said to him, "The Philistines are upon you, Samson." But he woke from his sleep and he pulled out the pin of the loom and the web. So Again, this is the third time that he's lied to her, and it's the third time that she's failed, and getting him afflicted by the Pharisees, or by the Philistines.
He should have took account of that.
She should have, but he didn't. And we're about to see where that leads to in the next few verses. Verse 15. Then she said to him, "How can you say I love you when your heart is not with me? You deceived me these 3 times and have not told me where your great strength is." It came about when she pressed him daily with her words and urged him that his soul, listen to this is the New American Standard, that his soul was annoyed to death.
And you think a woman can't do that, you're wrong.
Anybody can do that, not just a woman.
The center column says that his soul was impatient to the point of death. He is being driven up the wall. So he told her all that was in his heart, and he said to her, "A razor has never come to my head, for I have been a Nazarite to God from my mother's womb. If I am shaved, then my strength will leave me, and I'll become weak and be like any other man." Now it is true that he was to keep this Nazarite vow, but if you notice, where does his strength actually come from?
God.
Right, the Spirit of the Lord. Over and over and over it said the Spirit of the Lord came upon him, the Spirit of the Lord came upon him. But he attributed it to him having long hair and keeping the Nazarite vow. So one thing that tells you about Samson is the strength that he had was not something that he had all the time, but it was something that he only had when the Spirit of the Lord came upon him. Because you can't find one example of him having that strength without it saying the Spirit of the Lord came upon him.
This has always been, even with Israel. I mean, going back to Abraham, the strength of the covenant was not in circumcision, but circumcision was a sign that they kept the covenant with God. And because they kept the covenant with God, God blessed them. We come down to baptism today. Baptism is not the actual thing that saves us, but obedience to God's command. Us going down into the water and and in turn coming up a new Christian, a new creature, is because the strength of that is not in the actual going down into the water, but the obedience to it. It's a sign of us being in covenant with God. So it's always been that God recognized the sign. And this was given to Samson, that no razor was supposed to, they made really all the things that he violated. He was not supposed to drink strong drinks. I somewhat think Samson somewhere down the line fell on that one. He probably did drink strong drinks, but he kept that command that no razor was supposed to come to his hair, his head. He was not supposed to cut his hair. And that was a sign with him and God that he was still in the covenant with him. When that was violated, then there's now you got a problem with him and God and being out of covenant.
All right.
That's what I see. Maybe I'm wrong.
Right. Well, I was just pointing out how it always said in each case where he exhibited his strength that the Spirit of the Lord had came upon him, and so there was always that added to it. But he thought that his strength, maybe he didn't see it exactly like that. Zelda, then Laura.
So that's what I'm just going to ask you. Do you really believe that Samson really thought that, really believed that his strength was in his hair? Or was this the idea that God was with him?
Well, he didn't. He said that it was. Well, it says in verse 17 that he told her all that was in his heart, and all that was in his heart was, "A razor has never come to my head. If I'm shaved, my strength will be gone." Now later on, you'll see that he recognized that God could still give him that strength even without his hair. So there was an element of his faith in God in this as well. But I think most of his faith was probably in his hair, as you see here. But it's not till later that he asked God to give him that strength after his hair's been cut. Laura, were you going to say something?
So it seems like he's not really giving God the glory here, and I feel like that's why his strength leaves him, and the Philistines are able to overtake him because he only attributed it to his hair. Like he knew he was set apart for God, but he wasn't realizing that his strength really came from God, and he didn't
That could be. Verse 18. We're going to try to get down, well, probably not going to get very far, but verse 18. When Delilah saw that he had told her all that was in his heart, she sent and called the lords of the Philistines, saying, Come up once more, for he has told me all that is in his heart. Then the lords of the Philistines came up to her and brought her the money in their hands. Notice in this particular case, she knew that this was the real deal. As opposed to the other ones when he had deceived her. She knew something was up. But here she says, okay, he's told me all that's in his heart. So she recognized the difference in what Samson was saying here and what he was saying in the other occasions. So they bring all the money, and she made him sleep on her knees in verse 19, and called for a man and had him shave off the 7 locks of his hair. Then she began to afflict him, and his strength left him. She said, The Philistines are upon you, Samson. And he awoke from his sleep and said, I will go out as other times and shake myself free. But he did not know that the Lord had departed from him. Then the Philistines seized him and gouged out his eyes, and they brought him down to Gaza and bound him with bronze chains, and he was a grinder in the prison. All right, we'll stop there for now. Any comments or questions there?
How is it that he did not know that these people was cutting his hair?
I don't know.
That hard.
I'm not sure. I don't know.
Yeah, we're back to, I think that Samson, remember when he was born, he did not drink any strong drinks. But Samson did a lot of things that he wasn't supposed to do too. He went into harlots and he wanted to marry a woman of the Philistines, which was directly a violation of God's law.
He ate the unclean honey out of the lion's carcass.
But as long as he had his hair, as long as he somewhat, God recognized him still. Because at times, God would come upon him to accomplish great feats. But it wasn't until he lost his hair, and maybe it wasn't God so much that looked upon the hair, but him. He recognized. I don't know. Is his faith within his hair? Maybe his faith was in his hair. Maybe it was. I don't know.
I liked what Laura said was that maybe the Lord left him not because he lost his hair, but because he didn't give glory to God when she asked him where his strength came from.
Well, I think he put too much faith in his hair, and like you were saying, Keith, it's just a symbol of his covenant with God. It wasn't really where the strength was coming from, but Samson was too cocky all the time. He was like this guy that thought he could go out and just do whatever, and
that's my point.
Yeah.
That's my whole point. He did. Samson did a lot of things that wrong. We look down and say, well, he lost his strength because he had his hair cut. He and for whatever reason, he allowed himself to tell the story about his hair, and that's what it was. But was it because he lost his hair, or because Samson put so much emphasis on his hair that when his hair was cut, he lost faith? And when you lose faith, you lose that connection with God.
This was kind of like Peter when he's walking on the water and loses.
We're able to do great things, but then when we take our eyes off God or center ourselves on God, then we lose faith. When we lose faith, we don't have anything. I mean, God is not there. And so I'm just because if we say, he lost his strength because he didn't put God first, but then you look at his life. When did Samson put God first? Samson pretty much did what Samson wanted to do.
Well, that's one thing they note about a lot of these characters we'll study, is that a lot of them weren't the best people, but God was still able to use them to further his plan. Zelda, you end us off, please.
Yeah, just to think about this. Samson just knew in his heart. It wasn't the idea of God. He knew within his heart, as long as he had his hair, he had his strength. And when he realized his hair was gone, that's when he lost everything. That's faith in God. That's faith in anything. Everything. Once his hair was gone, all his power was gone. Everything was gone.
And it seems like